There will come a moment in your life when someone will mock you, disrespect you, lie about you, try to provoke you just to pull you down to their level. And in that moment, your greatest power won't be your words, it will be your silence. Because not every voice deserves your answer. Not every argument deserves your energy. And not every fool deserves a reply. There's a kind of silence that isn't empty. It's full of power. It's not the kind of silence that comes from fear or suppression, but the kind that is born from deep strength. The kind that comes from knowing who you are, what you value, and what you refuse to give away to those who haven't earned it. When people say things to disturb your peace, when they provoke you with their ignorance, their insults, their need to feel significant at your expense, you must understand your peace is not a gift for them to take. It's your responsibility to protect. Every time you react out of impulse, every time you try to prove yourself to someone who isn't even listening, you hand over a piece of your peace. You trade calm for conflict. You exchange clarity for chaos. And for what? To be heard by someone who isn't trying to understand you. To win an argument that doesn't even matter in the bigger picture. That's not strength. That's distraction dressed as dignity. The truth is, some battles aren't worth fighting, not because you're weak, but because you're wise enough to know the cost of getting involved. When you protect your peace, you create a space inside yourself where nothing outside you can control you. That space is sacred. It's the place where your thoughts become clear, your decisions become grounded, and your energy becomes focused. But when you allow the noise of the world, its opinions, its criticism, its provocations, to invade that space, you lose control. You become a slave to reaction instead of a master of response. And life becomes a series of emotional traps you keep falling into instead of a journey you walk with intention. Silence in the face of provocation is not silence out of weakness. It's silence out of choice. It's a declaration that your energy is too precious to waste, that you're not going to let a fool rewrite your mood or hijack your mindset. When you choose silence, you are saying, I am not available for this nonsense. I am not here to dance with drama. I am not lowering myself to a frequency I've already outgrown. And that, right there, is a level of power no amount of shouting can match. Sometimes, the most intelligent thing you can do is say nothing at all. Not every comment deserves a clap back. Not every insult requires a counterattack. Let them talk. Let them think they've won. You are not in this life to entertain every critic or educate every fool. You are here to grow, to evolve, to walk in peace. And growth demands energy. It demands focus. You can't waste your fire on battles that burn nothing but your own time and spirit. Preserve that fire for the things that matter. Your purpose, your character, your next level. The next time someone tries to pull you into a pit of petty arguments, remember this: as silence is not retreat. It's resistance. It's saying, "You will not rob me of my calm. You will not drag me into your chaos. I value my peace more than your opinion." And that mindset, once it's locked in, makes you untouchable. Not because the world stops trying to test you, but because you stop letting the world define you. And that is real peace. There are moments in life when words fail, not because they're wrong, but because they're simply not enough. You could explain yourself 100 times to people who've already made up their minds. You could shout your truth from the rooftops, but to a fool who's only interested in hearing what confirms their bias, your words are wasted. That's when silence becomes louder than anything you could possibly say. It becomes your shield, your statement, your stand. It says, "I don't need to prove myself to anyone who's already decided who I am." And in that silence, there's more power than 1,000 carefully chosen sentences. People often mistake silence for surrender. They think if you're not arguing back, you must not have anything to say. If you're not defending yourself, maybe they were right about you. But that's their misunderstanding, not your responsibility to correct. You don't need to chase every lie with a clarification. You don't need to fight every false judgment with an explanation. Sometimes the greatest clarity you can give the world is none at all. Because those who truly know your character don't need words to understand your silence. And those who don't, they're not listening anyway. Words have weight, yes. But silence has presence. It holds space. It demands attention in a way that noise never can. When you choose not to respond, you shift the power. Suddenly, the other person is left facing their own reflection, their own intentions, their own conscience. And most people can't handle that. They expect a reaction. They thrive on it. It feeds their ego, their narrative, their need to feel superior. So when you offer them nothing, not your anger, not your energy, not even your breath, you strip them of the reaction they were counting on. And that emptiness speaks volumes. There's a different kind of respect that silence earns. The kind that doesn't beg for attention, but commands it. The kind that doesn't compete for the last word, but lets truth unfold over time. You'll find that people who operate from a place of wisdom don't argue much. They don't jump to defend themselves every time they're misunderstood. They trust that time, truth, and character will do what words often cannot. And that's a confidence that can't be faked. It comes from deep inner strength, from knowing that silence is not passive, it's intentional. In fact, silence becomes a mirror. When someone tries to insult you and you don't respond, they're forced to deal with the echo of their own words. They're forced to sit with the discomfort of not being able to control you. That's why silence unsettles fools. They can't manipulate it. They can't twist it. They can't argue with it. Silence offers no foothold for conflict. It doesn't bend. It doesn't break. It just is. And in its stillness, it exposes things that noise tries to cover, like insecurity, immaturity, and desperation. So the next time someone throws words at you like weapons, consider this: your silence might just be the loudest, strongest, most undeniable answer you can give. Because in a world that's constantly shouting, the one who can remain calm, unshaken, undisturbed, unmoved, stands out, not as someone who doesn't care, but as someone who chooses to care more about their peace than their pride. And in that space of restraint, dignity rises. Let your silence speak. Not because you have nothing to say, but because not everything deserves to be said. Emotional mastery is not about suppressing your feelings. It's about channeling them with purpose. It's easy to speak when you're angry. It's natural to lash out when someone offends you. But silence in that moment, that's not natural. That's intentional. It takes discipline to hold your tongue when your ego is screaming for release. It takes strength to sit in the fire of your emotions and choose stillness over reaction. That's the difference between being controlled by your emotions and being in control of them. And the person who can remain silent when provoked is not weak, they're powerful beyond measure. In moments of conflict, silence becomes the space where wisdom is born. The split second pause between impulse and action is where emotional maturity lives. When someone insults you, mocks you, or tries to push your buttons, you're standing at a fork in the road. One path is easy. It leads to instant gratification, to the rush of shouting back, to the satisfaction of landing a clever response. But the other path, the silent one, that leads to clarity. It gives you the upper hand, not just over the other person, but over yourself. And if you can conquer yourself in the heat of the moment, what else can touch you? We live in a world that celebrates reaction. Social media thrives on it. Outrage gets attention. Arguments go viral. Everyone's trying to say something first. Say something loud. Say something that shuts the other person down. But emotional mastery doesn't chase applause. It seeks peace. It's not interested in being right if it means losing your balance. Silence is the quiet confidence of someone who doesn't need validation to feel secure. It's the calm of a person who has nothing to prove because they know who they are, and more importantly, who they are not. The truth is, not every emotion deserves an audience. Not every spark needs to start a fire. There's a sacred kind of power in feeling something deeply, but choosing not to let it control your behavior. Anger, disappointment, betrayal, these emotions are real and they're heavy. But when you give them the microphone in the wrong moment, they'll say things you'll later regret. Silence gives you time to filter, to reflect, to choose your response, rather than be owned by your reaction. It's a pause that can protect relationships, reputations, and your own sense of peace. People often misjudge silence. They think you're avoiding, hiding, or weak. But the wise know the truth. Silence is a sign you're operating on a higher frequency. You've moved beyond the need to convince anyone of your worth. You've risen above the games people play to feel powerful. Emotional mastery doesn't mean you don't feel anger. It means anger doesn't get to drive. It doesn't get to speak on your behalf. You become the gatekeeper of your emotions, allowing only what serves you to pass through. And that's where true strength lies. When you learn to stay silent in the middle of emotional storm, you become untouchable. Not because life stops testing you, but because you stop giving those tests the power to shape your mood. You stop being reactive and start being intentional. You listen more, you observe more, and you respond less. But when you do respond, it comes from clarity, not chaos. From power, not panic. Silence, then, isn't the absence of feeling. It's the presence of mastery, the quiet control that tells the world, I own my emotions. They don't own me. Drama cannot survive without attention. It feeds on reaction, on emotional energy, on the fuel we willingly pour into it every time we argue, defend, explain, or retaliate. The more you engage with it, the more it grows. Like a fire that consumes everything in its path, drama thrives when you feed it with your words, your time, your frustration. But the moment you go silent, the moment you choose not to engage, not to respond, not to take the bait, it begins to die. Not because the source has disappeared, but because you've cut off its oxygen. That's what silence does. It starves drama until it collapses under its own weight. There are people who aren't looking for resolution. They're looking for attention. They'll twist your words, question your intentions, and spin entire narratives just to provoke a reaction. And when they get one, they feel validated. They feel seen. But the silence of someone who refuses to be pulled into their chaos, that's unbearable for them. Because silence leaves them with nothing to fight, no energy to absorb, no emotional high to feed off. It forces them to confront their own noise with no distraction. And many people aren't ready for that kind of mirror. You have to recognize that not every conflict is worth your presence. Sometimes the wisest thing you can do is walk away. Not because you're defeated, but because you're disinterested. Because you have bigger battles to fight, higher goals to reach, and more peace to protect. The moment you stop responding to foolishness, it begins to lose its grip. The more you disengage from people who create problems for sport, the more power you reclaim over your own life. Silence, in this way, becomes a boundary, a firm, unapologetic message. I do not entertain what does not serve me. Drama loves an audience. It needs you to listen, to argue, to justify, to defend, because without that back and forth, it has no stage to stand on. But when you choose silence, you remove yourself from the scene entirely, and suddenly, the show begins to fall apart. The person trying to provoke you looks foolish talking to themselves. The gossip loses momentum. The slander has no traction. Why? because you didn't give it the energy it needed to grow. Silence may not stop the noise, but it stops you from becoming part of it. It's not always easy to stay silent. Our egos want to speak. Our pride wants to defend. There's a voice inside us saying, "You can't just let them get away with it." But here's the truth. They don't get away with anything. They just expose themselves to an audience that's no longer paying attention. Your silence doesn't mean they've won. It means they've become irrelevant. Because the more you level up in life, the more you'll realize that attention is currency, and drama is always too expensive. So instead of trying to fix every misunderstanding, instead of running toward every fire someone tries to start in your life, sit back, be still, let the noise echo into emptiness. People will say what they want. They'll create stories. Stir the pot, test your patience. But your silence, that's your refusal to play their game. That's your way of starving the drama, cutting it off from the reaction it desperately craves. And eventually, like anything that isn't fed, it fades. Not with a bang, but with a whisper drowned out by your calm. Focus is one of the most valuable currencies in life, yet it's also one of the most fragile. Every distraction, every unnecessary conflict, every moment spent defending yourself or engaging in meaningless arguments chips away at your ability to stay on course. When you react to every provocation, when you feel compelled to explain, justify, or retaliate, you pull yourself away from what truly matters. Silence protects that focus. It acts as a shield, guarding your energy from being wasted on things that don't serve your greater purpose. Imagine your mind as a laser beam, intense, powerful, and precise. When you respond to every disturbance, your beam scatters, it loses its sharpness. Your attention becomes fragmented, your goals slip further from reach. But when you choose silence, you preserve that beam. You keep it steady and strong, directing your full energy toward your dreams, your work, your growth. This is not about avoidance, it's about prioritization. It's about understanding that not every battle is yours to fight, and not every distraction deserves your attention. The world around us is noisy, filled with endless opinions, provocations, and unsolicited advice. People will always try to pull you into their drama or test your patience. But you have a choice to engage and get caught in the whirlpool, or to remain silent and steady, anchoring yourself to what truly matters. Silence isn't about shutting down or giving up. It's about tuning out the noise to tune into your own vision. It's about protecting the sacred space where creativity, focus, and productivity can flourish without interruption. When your focus is protected by silence, your decisions become clearer. You're not clouded by the emotions stirred up by external chaos. You're not rushing to react or fix something that may not even be your problem. Instead, you operate from a place of calm clarity. This clarity allows you to see what's important and what's trivial, to distinguish between real challenges and distractions, designed to pull you off your path, the power to say no to distractions, especially those disguised as urgent crises, comes from the discipline of silence. People who master silence understand that success requires not just hard work, but smart work. Smart work means channeling your energy with intention. It means knowing when to speak and when to stay quiet, when to engage and when to withdraw. When you protect your focus with silence, you conserve your mental energy. You keep your mind sharp and your spirit aligned with your purpose. You avoid the trap of emotional exhaustion caused by constant reaction to negativity or provocation. In the end, silence becomes a tool of empowerment. It's a way to guard your inner world, to keep your goals front and center, and to ensure that your journey isn't derailed by every passing noise. When you protect your focus with silence, you claim ownership of your time and your energy. You become the architect of your own success, not a prisoner of distractions or provocations. And that kind of focus, undisturbed, unwavering, and intentional, is what turns dreams into reality. Remember this: the moment you argue with a fool, you become one. Don't trade your integrity for temporary satisfaction. Let them think they've won. Let them believe what they want. Because while they're busy talking, you're busy growing. And growth doesn't need to shout. It just needs to keep moving in silence. Because silence isn't the absence of a reply, it's the presence of wisdom.